Radio Paranormal.
Welcome to Radio Paranormal.
Boom.
Hello, Katie Stafford. You don't look a thing like Brandon Cooper.
Thank the Lord. Thank the Lord Almighty. Thank you, Jesus.
Brandon's slumming it with Mr. Worldwide tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm jealous.
Yeah, what's he doing? Security?
Something.
Is that
like
what he said?
That's the claim.
Brandon doing security. That's scary. It's like, what is this, a gnome? You have a gnome over here that's going to try and security against me? I don't think so. Just hold him by his forehead.
Watch the legs run.
He's swinging.
Oh, you see, you should pop on for a few minutes next week and just
harass him.
How his mini security went.
Yeah, we call it mini security.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, that's funny. So who are we talking to tonight, or what are we doing first? I'm new to this.
You're new. I know.
Yes. Here, let me turn on the comments.
First day. It's
What's
your first
up,
day on the job.
Carol Garcia and
Carol back. Hey, Carol.
Seark Splendor Slender Man. Hello.
He's a mess. So usually we talk about what we've got coming up. You guys have Pythian and Castle coming up.
Yep.
For all ghosty people.
Yep. May 30th.
Where's that at?
That is at the Pythian Castle in Springfield, beautiful Springfield, Missouri. Get your tickets now. Come on out, stay a night, and get scared. The Pythian Castle is really cool, though.
I've heard.
Yes.
I've heard.
Yes.
And
really, really cool investigation to go to.
And we've got our guest here who is a sponsor of one of the things we've got coming up. That's
awesome.
Supernatural Inc.
Brandon
is involved in too. Kalila Smith of Haunted History Tours. She is one of the sponsors of the New Orleans Paracon here in New Orleans, May 30th, or I'm sorry, May. You got me down May. July 31st through August 2nd at the Astor Crown Plaza. And she has a company called Haunted History Tours, amongst so many other things that she does. And they are providing a bus and access to a cemetery to do some ghost hunting in.
Did you say cemetery?
Cemetery, yeah. And Mr. Brandon's going to be leading that one.
Brandon says he's crunk, not drunk. Because he said we're getting drunk up in here. Down here. I was like, really? That's not good, Brandon.
No.
He says we crunk up in here. Crunk, not drunk. Yeah, okay. Now we know. What's up, Blaine? Rohan? Hello.
So, and then Haunted History is going to have stuff around at the Paracon. So if you just want to take a break from ghosty stuff and want to hear some cool haunty stories, history, and all that other stuff, they are going to be there doing it. So we actually have only 2 Patty Negri, Sam Beltrusis, Father Sebastian experiences left. That was our big add-on to packages. We're really selling the ghost hunts. So I think we're over halfway sold on the 2 top packages. So NewOrleansParacon.com, go get your tickets and go to your workshop with Brandon and I. And Brandon and I are going to be bringing all of our supernatural ink gear and talking ITC. And Kalila is going to join us at one part during the workshop and explain to people why ghost hunting in New Orleans is different than anywhere else you're going to go.
Why does it hit different?
It is the most intense
I was
energy.
using young people language. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It hits different.
It hits different.
Right.
It's intense. And Kalila can talk about it because she's been immersed in it for many, many, many years. And has done a lot of investigations. So I'll let her tell more.
Okay. We bring her on now.
Let's bring her on.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hello,
Hey.
Kalila.
Hi.
You made it.
I did indeed. It's been a little crazy around here, changing internet servers, and it took forever to get rid of Cox cable, and now I finally got it. And then I was trying to hook the new computer that doesn't sync up yet to the new phone, and it was like not having it. So I got some of it done, but I'm on, so it's good.
Who'd you get instead of Cox cable?
AT&T business.
God, you're so lucky. We can't get that in the quarter.
Oh, yeah. I know. You know, when I had the visitor center still open, we could only get Cox. And I mean, I don't want to trash them, but they were like, they were charging an astronomical expense, for both places. I mean, the house and the little visitor center. And I got rid of all of the cable things on the TV and all of that stuff. And it was still the same amount. And then on the 7th of the month, they're like, you used up all your Wi-Fi. I'm like, how? We'll have to charge you another $100. It's like, nope, we're not doing it. So.
Yeah, I've got Ethernet cable connected and my computer was freezing.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, we were down in Mexico and having some trouble with like cell service and Wi-Fi, and the little people in the shops like, internet in Mexico sucks. I'm like, internet where I am sucks. It rains, not lightning, not wind. It rains. My internet goes out.
All the time. It's crazy here. My theory is, I have a theory about it, because at one time everything was pretty much on point. I think every time they've you hear them where we've lost towers, we're down to this tower. I don't think they rebuild those towers necessarily in sync with the level in which we have lost them. Right. Sure. And it's kind of crazy, but I finally, got rid of it. So now I'm trying to get everything working together, and the energy in this house is just is weird. How about that? I live in a house with weird energy. Wow.
Yeah, in New Orleans. Wow.
New Orleans, no less. Yes. The home of haunted, actually the house that we've run haunted history out of for 30 years. So imagine that. It's so weird.
You think Sydney's still around watching over you?
Yeah, he is. In fact, he told me he was going to, and I when he first found out, and it was really sad because he had pancreatic cancer. It was really tragic, and there was a certain point in time that he had to make the decision. Of course, does he want to do more chemo, or does he want to just roll with it? And and the tumor was growing after 6 weeks of chemo, and he said, I've decided to stop treatment, and I'm ready for this. I'm good with it. I can do this. And I said, well, okay. And, I thought about it because I'm also a medium. I'm also into spiritism and all. So I've got my own beliefs that he didn't necessarily believe in. And I said, now, like City, it's really important. It's very, very important. You must, the minute you kind of clock out of here, I want you to go through the light. Just focus on the light and go through the light. That's all you got to do. Just go through the light. And this is what he did. He sat back in the chair and he folded his arms and he kind of got comfortable and he went, nope, I'm staying right here with you. It was okay, let's see how this is going to work. And the lights were blinking before, and it would be funny because the lights would always blink. And I came over one day and I went up the stairs, and there's a certain spot on the stairs, when I go past it, the lights start blinking, and only for me. And he'd stop and he would just look at me and he'd say, I don't know what you're doing, but stop it. And I'm like, I'm not doing it.
Hey, Kalila.
Yeah.
Can you move your camera to your right some, just a little bit, so we can get your whole face up in the, a little bit more.
Okay,
Keep going.
I'm trying to keep my background out of
Can
here.
you see the
Oh, that over there. Oh my
yeah,
God.
that's what I'm going for. You see that? I'm just trying to get you centered in that. I see you're against the wall.
Yeah, well, the reason why is because this is the kitchen. I had to use a computer
Yes.
in the kitchen. Because
That's fine. I just want everybody to see your whole face there if they're
background out
looking.
of the way with the mop in the way.
That's fine.
Sorry
That's
about
fine.
that. I wasn't looking over there. All right.
Well, if I had the lights on behind me, it'd be crazy. It's crazy back here. So
I just moved in. In my defense, I just moved in several months ago, and it still looks like I just moved in. But anyway,
yeah, finish your story.
that was pretty much
sorry.
it. I mean,
Okay.
it was kind of spooky around here to begin with, and while he was sick, a lot of things were happening because his son had passed away 2 years before, and every time I pull in the driveway to come and take care of him when he was sick, there would be a cardinal out there on his son's altar. Out on the side of the house because they made a big altar for him with all his artwork on it, and this cardinal would be sitting there. And I mentioned it to him, and I said, "Cindy, there's this cardinal out there." And he says, "Yeah, I know. He lives in the back. He lives out by the pool in the bamboo." And I was like, "Really? Okay." And I said, "That's interesting. That's really, really interesting." And I said, "I think Justin's waiting for you." And I had brought him some food one day, and he said, after I left, he called me. He says, he says, "I ate my food out on the porch." And he says, "That cardinal came and landed on my car and sat there and watched me eat." And, and as time went on, he started believing more and more that it really might have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had some interesting things happen around here.
I bet.
Lately.
But did he give the cardinal any food though?
No.
I feel like that's a cliffhanger. I thought you were going to keep going with it.
It was not. It would not. I think it was sushi. Actually, it was Japanese food, and it was like not appropriate to give to a cardinal. But the cardinal stayed the whole time, and then I could see in the cardinal. So, and the night before he passed, he was like in the room I'm in now. There's a doorway behind me, and there's a room there, and then it was a room that where we had his hospital bed. And the dog, he had a pit bull who is now my pit bull, Sunny. And a lot of people might have seen her on Facebook because she's quite a character. But the night before he passed, this doorway right behind me, Sunny came up and she stood in the doorway. And you could see his bed from there. And she just stood there very still. And she kept looking back and forth like this. And there's an exterior door. And it was almost as like she was looking at the door where he was, looking at the outside door. It's almost like she was watching somebody walk back and forth or numerous things walking. And she did that. She did it for 3 to 5 minutes. And then she stopped and she turned around and she walked out and went and got laid on the sofa. And I was like, she saw something, and he passed the next day at 1:00 in the afternoon.
Oh, how sweet.
Yeah.
How sweet.
So she knew something was going on.
Yeah, they do, right? A lot of people talk about their pets and know all that stuff. I don't know where Katie went. He went bye-bye for a minute. So you're talking about the Paracon and the bus tour.
I'm here.
And he's back. Hi.
I'm here. I'm just like doing stuff around. I'm listening. I'm here. I removed my image there so you not looking at so you can see YouTube better.
Aw. So we're selling out the tours. If you didn't know, people are buying on the ghost hunt.
I see that. I've been keeping track of it. I've been reposting.
Yes, and so we've got a lot of vendors interested in the tour.
That's awesome.
All the ghost hunts, and we're launching it to weekend passes. So I went on a modified version, a version that we're going to do for the Paracon, because the dead of night is different than what we're going to do.
Right.
We're only going to go to the cemetery, maybe City Park. We're still considering City Park, but tell people about all that. Like,
it's really, actually the actual tour that we do. And again, like Jennifer said, it's what we're going to be doing with Paracon is a little different because it's an investigation, but on the regular tour, the Dead of Night tour takes people to numerous haunted locations that are outside of the city. And we include a cemetery at night, and it's really very spooky. We've had a lot of situations out there. We've gotten a lot of phenomena on just people randomly getting things on their photographs, their videos. I've seen some bizarre things out there. I've always told people the most haunted area in the city is the French Quarter, but Mid-City's got its share out there. It really does. And I'm very convinced that a lot of the locations out there, including a particular location inside City Park, that's all porters. You got a lot of portals out there because you've got the conjunction of all of those cemeteries. And, coming from, if you want to come from the voodoo perspective, because we're in New Orleans, you think about the crux of the crossroads. What do you have there? Right there at City Park Avenue and Canal Street. You've got, I don't know how many cemeteries there, 10, 12? You've just got this, it is the cities of the dead. It's no coincidence that we call it that. And there is a lot of energy there. I have seen things there with my bare eyes. Okay. I'm not talking about on a picture, on a video. I mean, I've seen a lot of that, but I've actually seen full-bodied apparition appear and disappear as if they're just passing through and then walking through something else. I've gotten things on photographs that I can't possibly explain. And when we started that tour, I actually took my all my material from my class that I was teaching at Delgado and UNO on Haunted New Orleans. And I used to take the students out in Holt Cemetery and City Park to do investigations. And there's just a lot of crazy stuff out there. There's things that, when we first started doing the tour, we used to go in Holt, which is the cemetery, which is actually not above ground. They bury them in the ground. It's where they bury the indigents. And the city eventually locked it up. The minute they found out we were going in there, they're like, get out. We don't want you in here. So, but we went in there for a few months when we first started, and I would park very close to the gate because one of our competitors would lock us in there. Like if because there'd be a lock hanging on it. And it was like, okay, I'm gonna stand right here. I'd put the lock in my pocket. I'm gonna stand right here. And I'd say, you guys can walk around a little bit, but don't go any further than there, because when I leave, I'm going to say, let's go. We're going to jump on the bus and get out of here. And about 20 minutes later, I'm telling people, get back on. We're going this way. Let's go. And I see this lady. There's this woman, and she's, she looks like she's about my age, and she's dressed like a tourist. She's got on, it was summertime. She had on a pink flowered shirt and pink shorts, and she's with look like two teenagers, a boy and a girl. And they're walking down this particular area going into this darker section of the cemetery. And I'm screaming at these people. Now, I knew I had 22 people with me because I counted. So I'm screaming at these people, please don't go back there. Folks, this way, we're getting on the bus. We're getting ready to leave. And at some point in time, I felt a presence behind me, and I looked like this. And here's 22 people behind me looking at me like I'm nuts. And I said, if y'all are all here, then who are, they're gone. And literally they just kind of evaporated. And it was really funny because several weeks later, someone caught a picture of that lady. And, I should bring some of this stuff to the con. But somebody showed me a picture on their phone of that woman, the very same woman wearing this very same outfit underneath a very large tree in Holt Cemetery where they do a lot of voodoo rituals. And she's standing there and she has a basket in her hand. She's holding some kind of a basket. And in showing it to different people on my tour, one night I had a gentleman who worked for NOPD, and he went, oh, that was Miss So-and-so. She used to stand on the corner of Canal Street and City Park Avenue in the 70s and sell roses to people at the red light.
Oh, so she was like our duck lady and the guy that with the
yes. And I was just like, I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's there's definitely something going on out there. So it's a great area. And that's why I told you, if you do not go to City Park, you're missing an opportunity because we've got a lot of stuff happen out there.
I agree with you. We weren't there very long with that group, but I crossed this little bridge that was not easy to cross.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And there was a little bench by the water, and I sat down there, had a little REM pod and a K2 meter with me. And so there shouldn't be any power there, right? By that bench.
Right. Oh yeah.
So we sat the REM pod in between the two of us, and each of us sat on the edge of the bench. And I said, if anyone's here, why don't you come sit down next to us? REM pod, boop, 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 starts going off. Like, okay, well, feel free to have a seat. We turned on the spirit box and just sat there for a few minutes about, who are you? You know, how's your evening? Is this a favorite spot of yours? And we would get different hits from time to time. And we just both kept looking at each other. We're like, well, neither of us are moving. We know it's not us. But between the two, we were getting some hits, and that was only for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's a lot of energy out there. And you're very close to a particular tree. I don't know if you noticed that huge tree that's out there. That tree is 700 years old. It was dated by someone at University, and that tree, I've seen people, like, when you're trying to film it or something, you see somebody walk in and then they disappear behind the tree. There's something going on with that tree, but there's definitely a portal right there in that area. And one night we had someone on the tour who shared a story with one of our tour guides. And again, this person claimed to have worked for NOPD. And he said that at one time back in like the 50s or 60s up in there, that someone had killed a bunch of children up in that area and thrown some bodies in that portion of the lagoon. Oh. Now it's interesting because prior to that, I had gotten a photograph of that someone had given me from the tour, where you could actually see little children's faces underneath the bridge.
Oh, wow.
Just a bunch of little faces under there. And I did a lot of research, and I could not find anything, to substantiate that or anything. But there was a lot that I remembered from being in the 60s out in that area. So I brought a friend of mine out there. Philip Humphreys is a local psychic who works for Marie Lowe's House of Voodoo, and he's done a million.
Oh, I know him.
You know Philip. So he's done a million investigations, and I don't tell him anything about any of these things. I just said, hey, come out and take the tour. So he came out, took the tour, and I was telling people the story of the lagoon, the Mona Lisa Lagoon, which is one of the legends out there. And while I'm telling them the story, I see him get off of the bus, and he just zooms right past us, and he's like going off in this other direction. And I'm like, oh gosh, he's feeling something. Yeah. So I shared with them a story about, the children. And I said, but we can't substantiate it because we really don't. I can't prove anything. I said, but I said, this is Philip and this is who he is, blah, blah. I said, let's go see what he has found over there, because he found something. Yeah. So I brought the group over there, and he was like in this trance state. He was like tranced out, and he was walking back and forth right in that area of the lagoon where you were sitting, like he was here and you would have been on the other side of the bridge on that bench. He was walking back and forth, pacing back and forth. And he kept saying, ripples in the water, 9 to 14, 9 to 14. And that's what he just kept saying over and over again, ripples in the water, 9 to 14. And I'm like, I told the group, I said, hey, look, this is still under investigation. I have no idea what this means. This is going to take more investigating to try to figure out what this means. Yeah. So I had brought another friend out who was also a medium about a week later, didn't tell him anything. When he walked out, he got there and he says, I'm seeing the numbers 9 and 14. And he says, I feel like this is the age of of people who were murdered out here. Yeah. So, and we still don't know. We still haven't found anything concrete, like a news article. But you have to take into consideration back then, one of the things Philip got during the day when I took him out later at another time, he picked up that there was the storybook land out there, because he asked me, he says, was there a carnival out here? He says, I'm getting the idea of a carnival. And I said, yeah, pretty much. I said, it was kind of like a carnival. And he says, I'm seeing like this really grubby person who works at like a carny, and he's operating the rides. Now, when I was a kid, some of those people who used to operate those rides was a bit sketchy. Okay. I'm not judging or anything. I'm just saying I remember being really scared of these people because they were sketchy, and they were dressed very much. Now, I grew up in River Ridge, a block away from some railroad tracks, and you'd see the freight trains going by, and they'd be open cars, and you would see the hobos inside the freight train. That's how a lot of these people, they ran the rail. They would hop the freight trains. And that is also how the serial killers, Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas out of Florida, used to travel between Texas and Florida on those rails. So, when Philip picked it up during the day, he even mentioned, he says, I'm seeing like trains going by. So I was like, yeah, you're hitting it pretty close. So we think that maybe, these were unsolved murders and nobody ever really figured out whatever happened. But
missing kids and stuff.
A lot of energy there. There's a lot of energy.
So something I get asked all the time, and Katie and I were talking about before we brought you on is, and we're going to talk about this at the Paracon. I don't care how experienced of an investigator you are. You will never experience something like New Orleans. You have never seen it. You have never seen it.
Yeah, that I'm sure there are places. I have been to places that had more energy than New Orleans, but not on this continent. Let me just put it that way. I mean, obviously, there's places over in the UK that are immensely older than some of the stuff that we have here, and some of the things I experienced and felt in when I went to Brazil, for instance, during rituals down there was very, very intense, a different kind of intensity. But yes, there's nowhere else in North America that you're going to go that you're going to feel what you feel in New Orleans. There's nowhere.
Give some people, you've been doing this a lot longer than me. So why? Tell why, what makes it different? Why?
Well, first off, we are a lot older than a lot of a lot of settlements. We're one of the oldest settlements in the country. And we had a lot of people say, and I tend to believe this, that it's got something to do with the fact that we are so surrounded by water. Mm-hmm. Because you'll notice, I'm sure you've noticed that most of your haunted locations are very, very, they're always surrounded by a lot of water. That's probably got a lot to do with it. But I think one of the things that is a big factor in why we have so much energy here is because from the moment the French settled here, they brought with them slaves from the Congo region originally, and these people brought with them their African traditions. Now, in the African traditional religions, such as Voodoo, Santeria, and the Congo religion, and all of these things, they focus around communication with the dead. Mm-hmm. And they also do a lot of work with the ancestors. So they keep their spirits alive. They're constantly physically feeding them, making altars, putting food on them. In Voodoo, I was in Voodoo for over 25 years. And, in these traditions, the belief was not, the dead are somewhere way over there. They're way over there. They're really not. They're very parallel to our world. Mm-hmm. And it's not a physical place. It's more a different frequency that's going on. It's a different energy level. It's a different frequency, like changing a channel on a radio. So they're always around us. We don't necessarily see them. And sometimes when we're busy and you're in your left side of your brain, you don't necessarily feel them, but I'm constantly talking to the dead. I talk to the dead all day long. And most people in Voodoo are doing that too. And I think because we nourish those spirits and we keep them alive and we keep those memories alive. And we also, during these rituals, what do you think's happening when they're doing all this drumming and dancing and chanting? They're opening portals. Mm-hmm. They're open. You've constantly got somebody somewhere in New Orleans, which is relatively a small town in comparison to some of the big cities out there. And they're constantly opening portals. And some people don't close them.
Right.
Through the years, through the generations, there have been people who have dabbled, and regardless of how good the intent was, they're opening portals because they want to communicate, and then they walk away and they don't close it, and you've got people passing in and out, and there's just a whole level of existence that's really intersecting with ours, and you don't necessarily get this in other places. You do to some degree, but this is a very concentration of it, a very concentrated area in a small geographical location. Yeah. I mean, the French Court is only 8 by 12 blocks.
Yep.
And the energy you have there.
It's intense. We've had mediums come on our experiences that have told me I wasn't prepared for what hit me when I got here. And I've warned people with abilities before they've come here. You better shield well. And you should go to a local shop, a voodoo shop, any metaphysical shop, and get something local.
Yeah, you have to. You got to stick with the traditions. You got to stick with the traditions because they may not understand other things. But yeah, when I was physically, I don't physically do the tours anymore. I stay pretty much behind the scenes. But when I was, like, for instance, doing the actual going into these cemeteries at night, I was going several times a year over to Miami and getting massive cleanses done to pull stuff off of me. I constantly had things attached to me and I was getting things pulled off of me. And that's not something you can do for yourself. Literally, I was having to go to Santeria and Babalao to have them do these rituals to get this stuff off of me. And they would always fussing at me. They were always like, you have to stay out of the cemeteries. I'm like, it's my job.
Yeah.
And why do you keep going in cemeteries? I'm like, it's my job. It's like, how else do I explain this? This is my job. So, it's a different energy here. And you've got people, and just going in the cemeteries, taking people in there, you would see ritual things where people not realizing what they're doing, going into cemeteries and trying to do magical work, which is a big no-no, I might say, but I'll save that for the con to talk about that. But, you've got a lot of people dabbling out there and they're opening up portals in cemeteries and then they walk away. And there's one rule of, in mediumship, there's a big rule that's in the, amongst all the mediums. And that is, if you're going to open a door, you better know what's behind it. And you also better know how to close it.
100%. 100%. Yeah, because I've done cemetery work with some voodoo practitioners, but that's not ritual. That was asking for permission to enter. We would bring a basket of offerings. We would
that's just being respectful. That's a big difference. No, there's people. There were people. I had a tour group one night. And it was really funny because one of my managers, he was putting everybody on the buses and they're whispering about this group that's come over here, and they got a group of people standing there, and they're putting the people on the bus, and the guy comes over to me and he says, they're all Cubans from Miami. Kalila, they're going with you. And I was like, of course, right, of course. Yeah, great, awesome. So I got on there, and somebody else told me when we got to the cemetery, she's like, you ought to go see over there. They got these blue candles over there, and they got this spell thing over here. And we walked up and down, up and down, up and down. And we could not find it. And finally, the elder in the group, he says, stop. And he says, maybe we're not meant to see that. Because in Santeria, they're very, very cautious, very respectful. They have a whole different interpretation of the cemetery. And he says, maybe we can't find it because we're not meant to see it. And I said, you know what? You're probably right. Let's go to a different cemetery. Let's get away from all this. And we continued the tour somewhere else. But it's different traditions have different rules. And here in New Orleans, most of the cemeteries are going to be guarded by those cemetery spirits in the voodoo tradition called the Gede. Yep.
You don't want to mess with them.
Oh, no. And you see, that's what people do. People don't understand the tradition. They don't understand, rituals. They don't understand dealing with the dead or what they represent. And they'll go there and try to bargain with them. You don't want to go into a cemetery and try to bargain with the spirits of the dead for a love spell, for instance, or prosperity, and they'll make bargains. And what happens is sometimes they'll even, promise something in return. And it's like, these are not highly vibrational spirits. They're not really close to God's consciousness, like, some of the Loa and the Orisha are necessarily. So you're bargaining with spirits who are going to take you literally. And if you anger them, they will come back at you. And that's the one thing you don't want. And people don't understand it. And in voodoo, we don't look at things as like, oh, that's good or that's bad. It's just kind of like, don't fool with something if you don't know what it is,
Yeah, for sure. And we'll be talking about voodoo at the Paracon too, which I'm very excited for people to learn what it isn't, because all they usually see is what it isn't.
Right. Yeah. That, the Hollywood version of voodoo is nothing like, especially nowadays with all the paranormal shows, and no disrespect to the people who are on the paranormal shows, but a lot of misinformation is still being given about the most, misunderstood religion on the planet. And we even have a voodoo tour that we do 3 nights a week, this Spellbound Voodoo Tour. And I wrote that tour many, many years ago, specifically to dispel all of the misconceptions about voodoo, to educate people so they understood it a lot better, because, you can't be walk around in fear constantly of things just because you don't understand it.
Right. And Marie Laveau, I mean, top on that list of misportrayed, misunderstood,
Absolutely.
Yeah, they got hairdresser right.
Hairdresser right, but yeah, I mean, it really is, and back, like when we first started the tours back in 1995, I mean, there was very little information that was actually written about voodoo. I mean, even then in the 90s, I mean, in New Orleans, most of the books were Robert Talent books, and they were fiction. I mean, talking about, Dr. John, and he skinned black cats with his teeth, and Marie Laveau sat on a throne and her feet were propped up on alligators. And it's like, okay, we know these things are not true.
Right.
Okay? That's a little bit fantastical. So we know these things are not true. And it's only been in the last, decade or so, a couple of decades, that we've had a couple of people from the universities, write more realistic things and do real research. But it's real interesting because there was a writer in New Orleans back in the day called Lafcadio Hearn. And if you go Google him, you'll find out he wrote a lot of stuff about New Orleans, but he was also one of the closest friends to Marie Laveau. He actually wrote her obituary, and he wrote about Marie Laveau 1 and her daughter Marie 2. And he dispelled a lot of the stuff back then, but a lot of people just were not familiar with who he is. And it wasn't quite as fantastical as the stories that, Robert Talent was coming up with, but they were more realistic, and he actually knew these people. And so if you read some of his work, it dispels a lot of things.
Well, Marie's obituary was published in the New York Times even, I think.
I'm not sure, but yeah, it probably was. I mean, he was a very prominent writer. He was not from New Orleans. He lived here, and yeah, he probably did get it published there. But one of the things a lot of people don't realize about Marie Laveau, especially nowadays, is that her best friend was the Monsignor in the cathedral, Pierre Antoine. I mean, they were like this, and Marie Laveau never abandoned her Catholic roots, and that's where Catholicism started blending with New Orleans voodoo, giving us the unique form of voodoo that we have today.
Yeah, and it's a very, if you take some time to learn, it's so interesting, and so it just brings home so many similarities between spiritual practices that sometimes you sit back and go, huh. Now you've written a book, haven't you?
I've written 7 books.
I thought you wrote more than one. Didn't want to put a number on it.
I have 2 on the back burner, but unfortunately, because I was co-writing them with someone else who was in the UK, and he passed away in 2022, they never got published. But yeah, I've written quite a few, and the ones I was working on with him was hitting more on these kind of subjects and talking about spiritualism and the dead, and and also a lot about the magical works.
Yeah. So where can they find your books? Can anyone?
On Amazon. Best way to do it these days is on Amazon. You just go to Amazon, you go to Kalila Smith on Amazon, and you'll see a list of all my books. It's the one that we sell on the tours is New Orleans Ghosts, Voodoo, and Vampires, which was originally published in 1997. And followed by that was Tales from the French Quarter, which has a lot of the stories that we feature on the bus tour. It's kind of a compilation of not only ghost stories, legends and so forth, and some funny stories about just people who live in the French Quarter and some of the weird things that happen on a day-to-day basis, working and living in the French Quarter. So yeah. So you might, some of those stories that we tell on the regular Dead of Night bus tour are in that book.
Yeah, we have a lot of characters here in the quarter for sure.
Yes.
Duck Lady always comes to mind. I remember her. I remember
her too. I didn't see her too much. One of my favorite characters I actually became very good friends with was Chicken Man. I don't know if you remember Chicken Man, but he was quite a character and a very colorful figure in our voodoo history as well.
Yeah. And then we had Mr. Okra. He just passed, didn't he?
I didn't know him.
Oh,
I missed that one somehow. How did I miss that?
And who else? There was another guy.
What about the Pie Lady? Do you remember the Pie Lady?
No.
There was a lady that used to sell pies out on the street. It's a shame because the city, gave her so much trouble. But she used to walk down the street and she would sing and she'd say, "Pie lady, pie lady, pie lady, pie lady." And she had these fantastic pies that were homemade. She had meat pies and she had fruit pies. And but she was just selling them out of her little cart. And of course the city, came down on her. But she was
now we got hot tamale, baby.
Oh, the tamale guy. Don't you just love the tamale guy?
He's great. So folks, if you come to New Orleans and we're talking about all these people, all you have to do is walk around day and night. The tamale guy, he's precious as heck. Sometimes a little schnookered by the end of the night. But he's fantastic. And he's like, "I love you, baby. At tamales, baby." He's great. So these are characters. Just if you want to go to a city that's great for people watching, this is it. You really just need to sit at like Harry's Corner or any local bar.
Or the square. You sit in the square on a Saturday, Sunday afternoon. You just watch the people go by, and it's just it can be quite fascinating.
There was this one guy that used to come into, oh gosh, I don't remember where Chris and I were hanging out at the time, if it was Ryan's or Harry's or where, and he had this big clear bag of stuffed animals. Like Mardi Gras throws.
I remember him, yes.
Probably on the spectrum or a little, mentally challenged, but sweet as heck. And he would come up to all the women and he would just look at you, and he'd talk to you for a minute. And the whole time he was looking at you, he was trying to figure out which stuffed animal in his bag was meant for you. Yeah. And then he would give it to you.
Oh, yeah, he was a young guy. I wonder whatever happened to him.
I haven't seen him in years, but so this is the kind of stuff that you just can't make up. And I think this is kind of why when people come here, they either want to move here or they want to come back, because it's just the uniqueness, and it's part of, to me, like our soul here for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Christy. Hi, and by the way, hi, Mom. My mom's watching. Mom logged on a little while ago. Mom watches every week, so I always say hi, Mom, to her. And she was on last week for Mother's Day, so it was kind of a fun little thing. So you're like an OG paranormal investigator too. I know we were having lunch the other day, and you seemed a little like it was kind of. I forget the story you were telling. It was about something that you're going into this, whatever you don't open this box. And you're like,
oh, that was the demon box. Yes. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I'm going to open that box.
It was the demon box. There was a reason. Yeah. That was back when we had, we had a witchcraft museum in New Orleans many years back. And the people who ran the witchcraft shop had actual artifacts that have belonged to Dr. Raymond Buckland. And for
that wasn't Russell's shop, was it?
No. Okay. Russell's shop had to do with Lady Onita Tubes.
Yes.
Who was the one who created the Religious Order of Witchcraft. And that was the broom closet. And that was on St. Philip Street. These folks came in a lot later. And Dr. Raymond Buckland is considered to be the father of American witchcraft. He was in a coven originally with Gerald Gardner, who of course created Gardnerian magic, Gerald Gardner was in the coven of Aleister Crowley when he was doing magic, all of whom these people came to New Orleans, by the way, to learn voodoo. So, this is where your traditions all got mixed in. But, Dr. Buckland moved from the UK to America in the 1960s. And he brought with him the ancient Celtic practices, of witchcraft. And he is the person who coined the phrase Wicca, which is actually the Old English word for witch. And it only means wise. Basically witchcraft is craft of the wise. But for a lot of people, it softened it. Didn't make it sound as spooky or scary, trying to convey that to people that it was a real religion. But Dr. Buckland came here, and if anybody's studied this path, they probably have the big blue book. There's a big blue book with a pentagram on the front of it. And that was the basis of his teachings, and it just took off from there. But and I was fortunate enough, because before I was in voodoo, I was actually studying and on the way to initiate into the religious order of witchcraft. I wasn't fully initiated yet, but I was working my way into that, and I had the pleasure of studying directly under Dr. Buckland. But anyway, he had some fascinating artifacts, and this group of people were fortunate enough to get their hands on them through him and open up this museum. And it was called the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft. And one of the things in there was a demon box. It was, I call it demon in a box. And it was a little wooden box, and it was wrapped in leather, and it had a symbol on the top that was on with wax. And when I was going through all the artifacts, I was getting ready to do an investigation there. I said, "What is this?" And the one of the curators says, "Now don't touch that." And I said, "What? What is it?" And I said, "It's a demon in a box." And I was like, "What?" And he said, "It's a demon in a box." And I said, "What's a demon in a box? What do you mean it's a demon in a box? How in the world?" And they said, "Well, this guy was possessed, and Dr. Buckland did an exorcism on him, and he now anytime," and I can tell you, being especially with Santeria, because like I said, I used to get these cleanses, and anytime there's something attached to somebody, I don't care if it's a demon or just a little bit of bad energy, you can't destroy energy, okay? You cannot destroy energy. So if you're pulling it off of one person, it's got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And that's what these practitioners do. They take it off of you, and they're going to put it somewhere so that it doesn't go to somebody else. Well, Dr. Buckland put this one into a box, and he tied it up, and he waxed it all on there, and he put it in his museum, and it's got a little sign that says, "Do not touch. It's a demon in a box." Well, this is in my younger, we're talking probably over 25 years ago that I did this. And we were doing a little thing where they were locking me in the museum with just me and my infrared camera with no lights. And it was really strange, because once they turned the lights off and I was locked in there, they had mannequins all over the place. Okay. So I'm going around trying not to run into things with this little night shot camera, and then all of a sudden you run into a mannequin and you're like, "Oh my God, what the hell?" And so, so I one of the most fascinating things I did see, that she had a crystal ball that had belonged to Sybil Leek, who was probably one of the more famous British psychics of all times. And I put the video camera to it, and it kind of was out of focus for a while, but I've got the video somewhere where you're looking in it. It's all green because, of course, it was the old, original night shot stuff. But you see clearly the hills and this beautiful rolling English countryside inside her crystal ball. And that was just fascinating. So when I got to the demon in box, curiosity killed the cat, right? But, I couldn't resist. And I'm like, if I'm going to do an investigation, I might as well just go for the gusto here. So I'm thinking to myself, how do we really know there's a demon in that box? How do we really know? When you pick it up, does it feel like anything? No. Does it shake? No, not really. So I said, well, let me just mess with it just a little bit. So I kind of got a little out of control. I'm like, hello, talk to me. And I'm like, talk to me, talk to me. And I'm shaking it like this. And then I sat it down and I took a recorder and I hit the recorder and I walked away. And the next morning when I turned the recorder on, it freaked out the owners and they didn't want me back in the shop anymore. But and then again, I'll have to gather all this stuff to bring it to the con so you all can hear it firsthand. But when you turn it on, you hear me screaming at the box to talk to me. And then you hear me setting it down. And then you hear this really monstrous voice go, Kalila! And he said it 3 times, my name. And it was like, whoa, that's kind of creepy. Okay. Let's just not open the demon in the box there. But yeah, something was screaming at me. So, but yes, I do have that recording.
Well, you rattled its brains. I mean,
well, I had to know, because it was like, what's the use of being here and just going, oh, we're not supposed to touch. Let's not touch that because we're not supposed to. But it was like, back then I'm not thinking what are the repercussions of this. I mean, nowadays I wouldn't do something so stupid. Yeah. I'm getting closer to crossing over. I don't want to be messing with that kind of stuff right now. So it's like, let's not go there, and of course in my own spiritual evolution, being in Santeria, I've come to respect it a lot more and go, yeah, that's probably kind of the stuff you don't want to mess with.
No. And it's interesting because the quarter's got a couple running around because we've run into
demons.
Yeah, we've run into one.
Oh, I'd like to hear about that. Yeah,
that was.
Does he work? Does this person work for us?
No, it's not. It was attached to a location, but it has affected several males over history who have murdered.
Okay.
Noah went with that, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. I know exactly where you went with that. Yeah, exactly. And I would tend to agree with that. We went to the place, this apartment that this tenant was like, I can't sleep. I'm having losing time. I'm having dreams of dying by strangulation, et cetera, et cetera. And in that apartment, which is in the French Quarter, and there is a very famous story about someone who died that was strangled and cut up. It is not that story. It's a different one. But this lady was strangled and cut up and put in a trunk in this apartment. Trunk murders, huh?
And it was pulled out after Katrina. The person moved to across Elysian Fields. And when he moved out of that apartment, when they got their settlement, they found the trunk still in the apartment. They said, okay, whatever's left we don't want. And they open it up, put it on the medium, and they open it up, and there was this decomposing body that had been in there for a couple years.
I think I know whose trunk that was.
Yeah. So we go and we think, here's us stupid, right? We think it's this lady who was killed there, and she was stored in this crawl space in this apartment. And I sat in the crawl space, and then we started doing some spirit bot works and SLS work. And I'd say within 30 minutes, it was not that. It wasn't that spirit. We figured it out real quick that was not what it was. And it was pretty nasty. So we had our share of, I mean, that was back in our early, I think it was like our 3rd investigation ever. So if anyone wants to know all the stupid crap you can do.
Yeah, you can do a lot of stupid stuff, until you get to the point where you're like, okay, do I really want to take this home with me and have to take it? Because really, they will make you sick. It can make you sick, physically sick. And, whatever is weak in your body, it's going to hit you in that area and it's going to go there. And you don't want this stuff attaching to you because it is real. And it can be physically dangerous to you because it can consume you. And I have seen people literally eaten from the inside out with stuff like this because they didn't take it seriously. And so, and of course, when we're young paranormal investors, because you got to realize, people out there now, they're thinking you can go and you can see paranormal research anywhere. Back when I was doing it, there was nothing. There was really nothing. There was no there wasn't a whole lot of books written about it. There was nothing. It was just a handful of people doing it. We didn't even have barely any internet at the time. It was AOL. I mean, seriously, so the way you started an investigation, like for the tours, I would just go and knock on people's doors and say, hi, we're saying that I've been saying this place is haunted for, since I'm a little bitty kid, because that's what I was told. What have you experienced? Can I set the equipment in here? And, and so, I mean, I was at the beginning of all of this investigation stuff. I had one of the very first EMF meters that was built by a guy somewhere up in like Wisconsin or Ohio, one of the northern states or something. And, you couldn't just get online and go buy an EMF meter. Photographs were taken with infrared film. We didn't have infrared cameras in the very beginning. And I was shooting with a film camera. And I would have to go to the specific film place, and it was on City Park Avenue across from Delgado. And I would have to buy it was black and white infrared film. And it was very expensive back then. I mean, this is in, the early 90s, and this is $40 for a roll of film.
Wow.
To take some pictures, and then you had to pay for the processing. And the film was so sensitive, they had to keep it in the refrigerator. Like, you couldn't just throw this in your bag and then later on put it in your camera. Oh, no. You had to take it home very quickly, make sure it stayed cold, stick it in the refrigerator. And then when it was time to put it in a camera, you had to have it a black bag or go into a room, a dark room, like no lights, no light coming in whatsoever, and put the film in the dark, or put the film in, when I say a black bag was something you'd zip the camera up in it, and your hands are in the bag, and you're trying to fumble to put this roll of film in there, but you can't see it, because if the light hits it, it's ruined, and then you can't use it. So, that's what you had to go through. And then you might take, go through several rolls of that expensive stuff and, take 40, 50 pictures. And maybe if you're lucky, you might get one thing, maybe.
Yeah.
We didn't start getting a lot of phenomena on photographs until the age of digital.
Right. And then you can change the light. I see a lot of people using slow speed, low light, which kind of raises my eyebrow now, because I don't know. In our stuff, when you have other people moving in the room, if you're doing that slow shutter speed,
it's going to ghost, because that's, actually that's how in the early days when we were doing the documentaries, when we did our first documentary, we had those fantastic little Sony cameras that had the night shot and all that stuff. And you put that sucker on slow-mo and you had somebody run through it. Well, what did you get? You got the ghosting effect. And, and that was the beginning of CGI of, now they have AI ghost out here. You can't tell what's real and what's not. But I mean, back then it was like, if you had that trail behind something, that could have been done by, somebody just running through on a camera on slow-mo,
Yeah. Yeah. We had someone call in and say, a demon dog jumped on my bed and growled at me. I have video. So many points in that statement, your eyebrow is going to raise and say, I'm sorry, what? On my cell phone. No, on my cell phone. Say, send it to me. And playing at regular speed. Let's just completely glaze over that at that one point in time, they picked their phone up and was videoing. We'll just forget that part, right?
Yeah.
Because, and they have a TV in their bedroom. And, if your TV's off, a lot of them had that little red light on it. And so you hear this, which does not sound like a growl, and you see the phone move. I'm like, it's your TV light. The red eyes are the little red light on the bottom of your TV. Move the phone. So then you're like, are you just trying to mess with us, or I don't know. It cracks me up sometimes. It's like, it's not, guys, it's not always paranormal. It's sometimes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Just, you can take it to the extreme. You've got to really be your own, skeptic. In case. But now it's so impossible. I tried in the very beginning when they first started coming out with they weren't even calling it AI at the time. They would have the ghost apps, and sitting there and having, so let me figure out, is this an app or did they get an actual ghost? And it got so frustrating because it was like there were so many apps and they were coming out so fast. And it's like, I can't, I got to work. I can't really like shut the whole business down or chase behind apps and try to figure out what's a ghost and what's not. And then I was just like, you know what, this is just too much to have to sift through. Yeah. So it's kind of, if somebody's faking phenomena, it's kind of on them, and shame on them, but nobody's going to pay you for faked phenomena. And now that you got AI, and fortunately, somewhere in the coding of whatever that picture is, it will say it's AI. There's ways to show that it's AI. Yeah. But again, who's got time to chase behind all that kind of stuff?
I'm not that smart. We play a game at home. Sometimes it's not a demon. It's just a dog fart, folks. That's all it is.
That's true, though. That it could be. I mean, very few things are actual demons. I'm more afraid of, the living for the most. I mean, I'm more afraid of the energy of the living. I mean, that terrifies me, but with some people. But yeah, you just never can tell. But it's just such a vast amount of information, and sadly, over the last 20 years, there's just been a lot of misinformation that people have bought into, and kind of gotten away from its true form of, what the whole purpose of this is. And it's just to prove that there is life after death. Yeah.
And that's it. So you've got our Paracon coming up July 31st through August 2nd. We're so excited, but you have other things coming up, don't you? Do you have something right after that?
I do. I have Hex Fest. Which is a witches con. And that's going to be coming up the next weekend, and all sorts of classes and workshops and discussions on all things mystical, any kind of occult, magic, witchcraft, also some paranormal stuff, I'm sure, because it all kind of ties in with one another. And so you've got Paracon, and then you got a Hex Fest coming up right behind it. So,
and you're going to be teaching too?
I believe so. I did last year, and I don't know what I'm teaching. I think I'm just talking about the ghosts in New Orleans. Kind of that's the classical thing I come in and talk about, because why is exactly what we're talking about now. In the beginning of the show is why is it so haunted here? Why New Orleans? Why are we doing all this here? And bringing a lot of the stuff that I've shared with you today actually there, and showing people pictures, showing people some of this stuff, and giving them a little glimpse beyond that veil.
Yeah. So one of our other guest speakers, Angel Morgan, she's doing animal communication and spirit animals. She actually has tickets to Hex Fest. So she is staying after our Paracon and going to go to Hex Fest. So I would love to introduce you guys. And
we'll have a whole week to hang out and
And she is so fabulously witchy. It's amazing. So
That's great.
Excited. So it'll be fun for her to see both, and for her to have a familiar face too. I know she knows Christian, but I know for you guys, you've not met yet, so it'll be fun to introduce you as well.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Well, Katie, I think we've got to wrap up. Kalila, thanks for coming on. If you guys are coming into town on the Paracon, not on the Paracon, go to hauntedhistorytours.com if you want to book some stuff other than ghost hunts. They're the OG, man. They started this in the city. So they're the ones to go to. And then check out New Orleans Paracon and Hex Fest and Paranormal Task Force at the Pythian Castle. I cannot talk now. And there was not that much vodka in my drink. And thanks for joining us, Mom. I know you had a power outage, so thanks for coming on.
Hey, Jennifer's mom.
But thanks, everyone, for joining us tonight, and we will see you again next week.
Thanks a lot, Jennifer. Bye-bye.
Ta-ta for now.